Hi there, guys and girls. I wanted to do a little video about the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, but I wanted to talk about something specific, and that's Mortal Kombat Gold. As you guys know, there's been a lot of discussion lately, will we get Gold? And it's something that I've been like, well, I'd like Gold, but I'm not sure if we'll get it, right? And that is because it is a technological step up from PlayStation emulation. At first, I thought it was a shoe-in, more so. But after hearing that they got the PlayStation, specific PlayStation emulation working and no mention of anything else, although if they did mention something else, it would confirm it, right? I still think... and then them saying that PlayStation 2 emulation, laughing that off. I never expected PlayStation 2 emulation. I never expected Xbox 360 emulation. I know, as someone who's peered behind the bonnet of the Mortal Kombat games and looked in the files, and I can see what's going on there. There's a lot more going on, right? I know, but I also know that Mortal Kombat Gold takes up 800 megabytes on the GD-ROM. But if you take that data off the ROM, it's 800 megabytes. A CD holds 700 megabytes. A GD-ROM is generally 1 gigabyte, but maxes out at 1.2 gigabyte, right? A DVD-ROM is 4.7 gigabyte. So you see the step up, right? If you had to have all three in a line, the Dreamcast technology for the GD-ROM is closer to the PlayStation side than it is the PS2 side. It's basically... a 700 megabyte storage media is a CD, 650 to 700 megabyte, and then you've got 1 gigabyte GD-ROM. And then it basically, when you get to PS2, it's 4.7 gigabyte. That's a huge leap in data storage. Massive. So the PS2 games, the Xbox games, that use this DVD technology, this 4.7 gigabyte technology, have a lot more to them. Huge amounts more data. Because they have that space on the disc. But like I said, Mortal Kombat Gold on a GD-ROM takes up, the maximum size I saw was 800 megabytes. That's with all the CD tracks and the data. Right? 800 megabytes. That is so close to the media of a CD. And remember, this is a CD is the container to hold the data. That's all it fucking is. Once that data's off there, it doesn't matter what it's on. It's going to be on an SSD or a hard drive. Doesn't matter what the file size is. It matters about playing it, running it at the right speed, emulating the audio, emulating the graphics, like emulating the engine, right? That's the part that matters. So all I'm trying to say is here that I believe Mortal Kombat Gold is so much closer to PlayStation than PS2 that I would say it's definitely very in the realm of being emulated. We're talking about a slight step up in resolution. This is something I talked about on Fate's podcast the other night. I prepared some images where I showed a rip from a Mortal Kombat 4 game, which is 256 by 256, and a rip from Dreamcast, which is 512 by 256, which adds 256 more pixels wide to make a wider asset, a wider resolution asset. And that basically allows them to fit more in there, maybe increase some of the size of some of the maps in there and stuff, some of the skin textures and cutouts and stuff that are in there to give them, a bit more depth because they have that extra to work with, right? But, if Dreamcast has been emulated for so long on a on a PC environment, so is PS2 and all these things. All you need to think about it is like this. A Nintendo Switch, a PlayStation 5, a PS4, an Xbox 360, an Xbox One, a Commodore 60, not a Commodore 64, I guess, a Super Nintendo, a Mega Drive. They all have, storage limitations. RAM limitations and speed limitations. They're like the three: CPU, RAM, graphics, sort of thing, right? Um, CPU, RAM, storage, graphics. I guess you could say it's more like the four main things that are going to make up your engine or running the game. So that's why when you rip something from, like, for example, when I rip something from Mortal Kombat on PC, like the first ever one, the sprites are tiny, because this ran on a 386 originally, right? If I rip something from the Mega Drive or Super Nintendo, tiny sprites, right? But as we go up, as we go up, as we go up, as we go up, more power, more RAM, more graphics, more storage, more power, more RAM, more graphics, more storage. You understand, right? So the fact is that Dreamcast has been emulated for a long time. And the best way to look at it would be like this. Would an emulator be able to run on a Nintendo Switch, a Dreamcast emulator? That's the question you would need to answer. If a Dreamcast emulator could run on a Nintendo Switch, and there's probably people out there that are better suited for this sort of research than me, that would know a bit more about clock speed and hardware and everything, right? And once you have the answer to that question, you have the answer to, is it possible for Mortal Kombat Gold to be in this collection? I believe it's a yes. And remember, the Dreamcast came out in 1999. It came out 6 months before the PlayStation 2. So it is, I believe, like I said, I haven't done the in-depth research. I've looked in the files. I've looked at the file size. I've done some spec research. You know, the CD-ROMs use CAL streaming versus CAV, which was Dreamcast. It's a type of like streaming data from live streaming of data, whereas CD spins up at full speed all the time. I think that's CAV, which was the Dreamcast one. And doesn't, whereas a CD will spin up when it needs data. I think that's what it was. I read this description today, so I didn't even know about CAL and CAV until today. And this is where you can get super overly technical about doing your research, because obviously a PlayStation 2, a Dreamcast, they all have different tech. They have a different CD-ROM. Dreamcast is very unique in that it has its own GD-ROM, gigabyte disk. That stands for gigabyte disk ROM. That's so it can hold 1 gig of data. Any CD, it started at 650 megabyte, but they stretched that to 700 later. So, when you get to PS2, you get to DVD, which is 4.7 gig per layer. And then you can have dual layer and double-sided dual layer. So you can have up to, 9.4 per layer. So 9.4 gig per disc side with 2 layers. That allows you to do a lot of crazy things. And then you have Ultra HD 4K, which is, I think, 80 gig. I don't have that spec in front of me. Per disc. So as you can see, those are the leaps in storage media. And then you have the technology itself, the disk drive. How does that work? And then, like, the system speed, the clock speed, the RAM. Like I said, while Dreamcast came out in 99 and PlayStation was already around for a while and was sort of teetering out when the Dreamcast came in, because PS2 was on the way. And then Dreamcast beat them to the punch. Sure, Dreamcast is not a PlayStation era console. It's not a PS2 era console. And it is closer to the release date of a PS2 console as a competitor. But technically wise, it's closer to PlayStation in terms of what it can do. So it ran Windows CE, used the SoftDeck ADX codec, did some great, like, rendering with its graphics, like things like Dead or Alive 2 looked amazing. So when we had this system on display in our store, we set up a Dreamcast display. Me and the boss loved Sega Dreamcast. We went above and beyond. And we were an independent game store, so we didn't have a lot of money. But we went above and beyond to have a great Dreamcast section, and we did. We had the Sega out all the time. That's how I got all the MK Gold posters that I sometimes tweet about. I've got a cylinder of MK Gold posters. he gave us like a Mortal Kombat Gold, like sorry, Mortal Kombat Gold, a Dreamcast poster that you put in like a mat that goes on the floor, big Dreamcast swirl, and we had like shelf strips, and we built a cabinet for our Dreamcast section, and we put a monitor up there because we were a computer store that sold games, and we had the Dreamcast on there with the VGA adapter running Dead or Alive 2. And that sucked so many people into the store. We had that monitor like pointing out of the store. People would walk past, catch the monitor, and they go, "What's that?" You know, and then they'd ask me, and I'd be like, "Well, that's Sega Dreamcast. You know, that's what it looks like. It's a great console, blah blah blah." And then they'd go, "Oh, what do you think about PlayStation 2?" And this was the discussion I would always have. And unfortunately, it would always end up in Australia because DVD players were new and expensive. Unfortunately, when we got to the question, can the Dreamcast play DVDs like the PlayStation 2 can? And the answer was no. It put the customer off. And that's really sad to me. It's something that I've always bitched about my whole life. I'm like, the people gave a shit more about DVD movies on a video game console than video games on a video game console. Do you know what I mean? Like, the Dreamcast is such a wonderful system. And if they had supported it, these morons that went out and bought PS2s because it played DVDs, they were going to add a DVD playback expansion to the Dreamcast. They showed it at E3, I believe, in the year 2000. And there was going to be some add-on for the Dreamcast. It probably would have played DVDs in the end. But because everyone bought PS2s, until the Dreamcast copy protection was broken, and they all descended upon the Sega market like parasites. I don't know, what would you call them? I don't know. They all suddenly wanted a Dreamcast when the copy protection was broken. That was also very annoying. You know, I believe in supporting the system. You know, I'm not against piracy, having the odd copied game or whatever. I'm not. But I believe you should try and buy as many of your as many games as you can to support the system. You know what I mean? So the system stays in the market, and so you can keep enjoying the system. And unfortunately, there's a lot of morons that don't do mental gymnastics. They just want to keep playing the system, but keep ripping off the games, and they think it's great until the system goes away and they don't make games anymore. And they're like, "What happened? What happened? I liked playing on the Sega Dreamcast, but now there's no games anymore. Why?" You're why. Because you're a moron. Like I said, you know, I'm sure every gamer out there has owned a pirate copy of something at some stage, you know. I'm not against it, but, you know, you should also support the system as much as you can, you know. So, I mean, I just wanted to talk about this because I don't think enough people really talk about the leap in tech between PlayStation, Dreamcast, GD-ROM, and DVD-ROM. The leap from GD-ROM to DVD-ROM is quite large. You know, the leap from CD-based emulation to GD-ROM is minor. And that's why I was hoping that we got MK Gold. And like I said, when you eliminate the disc-based media, it's basically, file structure-wise, extremely similar to what you get on a PlayStation. You know, so... And I'm not saying this because I'm saying we're definitely going to get MK Gold because TMK said that they could emulate it. You know, I haven't seen any emulator. You know, I don't know. I haven't built an emulator, so what would I know? All I can tell you is what I've seen, the specs I've read about. I'm saying it would be possible if they had the time. I'm sure. You know, but unfortunately, they're out of time. You know, where are we? We're in August. You know, this collection's supposed to drop late September or something, November. I'm not sure. The date seems to be up in the air. You know, the physical comes out the 12th of December in Australia. I've now pre-ordered those, by the way. So, I'm very happy about that. Because EB got them, I was able to do pre-orders. Pre-orders at EB, you can put the minimum amount on, so I was able to pre-order all three. And every couple of weeks I'll leave some money on there and until it's paid off. So I'm very happy about that. If I go to other retailers, you got to pay the whole thing up front, and I can't do that for 4 games right now. It's just too hard. So yeah, no, I'm wrapped about that. But yeah, I wanted to do this video, like I said, and just explain my point of view on the whole MK Gold and why I think it was possible for it to be in the collection, and we still don't know if it will be or it won't be. It looks like maybe not. Do you know what I mean? We don't know for sure though. You know what I mean? Apparently, and you should check him out. Headlock Gaming did a great interview too. I should mention this, where he confirmed there are 2 more games coming. So they've announced Trilogy, and there's 2 more games. I am certain one of them is Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. The reason is it's PlayStation's emulated. It fits within the realm of a classic Mortal Kombat game, and it's a different style of game. If you look at like Cowabunga Collections, what they like to do, have a variety of games, not just not just that. They like to spread out the media. Do you know what I mean? I also think that Mythologies was a lead-in to Mortal Kombat 4. Well, I don't think that it was that. It introduces characters like Quan Chi and stuff. So it has a relation to MK4 that is in the collection. And also, John Tobias being on the as part of this collection, or working with them and behind the scenes on the content side of things, and this was his baby, MK Mythologies. Do you know what I mean? So I do think Mythologies will be part of it. One of the pins is blue. Someone, Fate, pointed out that he thinks that the pins correlate to each event, and they might be references to the games. And if you think about it, it's kind of funny. You got a red pin, you got a purple pin, you got an orange pin, and a blue pin. And blue doesn't fit with the other 3 colours, really. So it's very possible what he's saying, and that blue might mean Sub-Zero, And I'd be happy with that. I'd be quite content with that. And maybe they could do gold later. Maybe it could be DLC. And if we don't get Mythology Sub-Zero or Special Forces or Gold, I'm hoping they do DLC. I think it'd be great. The fans will support it. We'll buy it. Clearly, they've started something great with the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. Everybody loves Digital Eclipse. They've done a great job with their previous work. Do you know what I mean? So, when this collection comes out and everyone's playing it and having a good time, and I know they will, I hope they do consider releasing the games that, the next generation, the next lot of games. Hope they consider maybe trying to build a PlayStation 2 emulator if they can. Even if it has to run on only PS5 and only Xbox Series X or Switch 2. That's how you got to do it moving forward. You're going to have to leave the older console that can't run the harder stuff. You're going to have to leave one behind. That's just how it's going to have to be. Moving forward, if you need that technology to run those games, and people will accept that. They will. Us as Mortal Kombat fans will accept it. The other thing we don't accept is when a game gets announced, and I'm specifically thinking of MKX. We're really excited because they announced when MKX came out, it would come out on Xbox One and PS4, but they said there was also a 360 and a PS3 one coming out, and that did not work out, and they ended up being cancelled. And while I appreciate them trying to do it, I think they should have been sure before they told everybody that they could do it, before they said we're cancelling now because we can't do it. So that's where things can go. So hopefully moving forward we get what we want, but only time will tell. I think 10 days away till Gamescom Germany, and I'm hoping that's where it's going to be real cold. I'm hoping that's where we're going to get Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time for another video. Peace out.